She died with her eyes still open, her voice lost beneath the hum of machines and the weight of betrayal. In a galaxy that twisted love into weakness and power into chains, she was the last light. And when that light went out, the darkness didn't celebrate. It consumed, not with fire, but with silence. They called it heartbreak, as if the pain wasn't carved into every corner of her life. As if watching the man she loved vanish into shadow wasn't enough to tear the breath from her lungs. But maybe, just maybe, if she had held on, if she had chosen to live, the galaxy would have rewritten its own destiny. There is something cruel about what could have been. It whispers behind every triumph, every tragedy. A reminder that the story we know was only one thread among thousands, and hers. The thread of Padmé was cut too soon, left frayed and unfinished. A mother's arms never held her children. A lover's voice never reached her fallen knight. But what if she lived? What if the stars gave her a second breath? What if her will overcame the sorrow? If she opened her eyes, touched their faces, whispered their names into the dawn? Would the Empire have risen? Would Vader have endured? Would balance have meant something different? Something deeper? There is power in imagining the impossible, in daring to hope that one life spared could undo decades of ruin, that love left alive could be the blade that severs fate itself. Because Padmé was more than a queen, more than a senator, more than a mother. She was the heartbeat of everything the galaxy forgot how to be. In this video, we explore a world where Padmé survived, Mustafar, where she raised the twins, where her love might have redeemed Anakin, and where the galaxy itself could have turned toward healing instead of hate. What if her breath never faded on that cold operating table? What if the heartbreak didn't take her? What if she opened her eyes, held her children, and whispered their names as the stars turned above her? The galaxy would still be broken, but there would be light flickering in the dark corners. There would be a mother to guide it, not a myth buried in silence. Padmé was more than a symbol. She was strength wrapped in grace, clarity wielded like a blade. If she had survived, the rebellion might have begun sooner. Not with guns or armies, but with voices and vision, with Leia and Luke raised not as fugitives, but as firebrands molded by love. Imagine that legacy forged, not by tragedy, but resilience. Anakin's fall didn't have to be final. If she lived, his darkness might have been pierced by memory, not revenge. The sound of her voice, the warmth of her presence, the reality of her survival. These could have shattered the illusion of power the Emperor wrapped around him. He didn't need saving by a son. He needed to be reminded of who he was before the pain. The children would have known their mother. They would have heard her stories, seen her tears, watched her stand up even when the galaxy pressed down on her shoulders. They would not have grown apart, scattered by fear and duty. They would have grown together, bound by purpose and anchored by truth. This path unseen and unexplored carries the scent of possibility, of a galaxy shaped not by death but by endurance. It is not just about what Padmé could have done. It is about what the galaxy could have become if it still had a heartbeat. Padmé's voice was one of the last sparks of reason. And yet they silenced her, not with chains, but with abandonment. The war made her disposable. Her love made her a liability. Her truth made her dangerous to those who preferred lies wrapped in order. Her survival would have been a rebellion in itself. They say she died of heartbreak, as if the galaxy wasn't cracking under her feet, as if love was a weakness and not the only force worth defending. They dismissed her death as inevitable, when it was preventable. She wasn't defeated. She was failed. If she had lived, she could have named the Empire for what it was. Not a savior of peace, but a machine of control. She would have stood in front of the cameras and told every system that the war was a scam, that her husband was twisted by fear, that the future was still theirs to reclaim. And that would have been enough to make Palpatine tremble. We were robbed, not just of a queen, or a senator, or a mother, but of the one person who might have broken the cycle before it began. Padmé's survival would have been a reckoning. And we didn't get it because those with power chose silence over defiance. She was supposed to hold them, to see them crawl, walk, speak, to hear them call her mama beneath a Coruscant sunset. But all she left behind were names and memories that belonged to others. The children grew up with myths, not moments, with shadows, not stories. Leia inherited her fire, but never her touch. Luke carried her hope, but never her voice. They both fought for a galaxy they didn't fully understand, not because they lacked courage, but because they lacked the person who could have shown them what courage really meant. Padmé's absence wasn't just emotional, it was foundational. And Anakin, the broken man behind the mask? The moment he learned she lived could have been the moment he turned back. Love didn't die on Mustafar. It was buried, but it wasn't gone. If she had reached out, if her voice had cut through the breathing and the rage, would he have stopped? Would he have returned? Instead, She became a ghost in his mind, a what-if that haunted every breath. He didn't fear the Emperor. He feared what Padmé would think of what he'd become. That fear hardened him. But if she had been real, alive, waiting, it might have softened him before the damage was permanent. This isn't just a story of survival. It's a story of loss, echoing through time. One woman's death rippled across decades, not with explosions, but with absence. Imagine it, Padmé with the twins on a hidden world, teaching them the languages of the Senate and the secrets of the stars. Training them not with sabers, but with conviction. Watching them laugh instead of bleed. Holding their hands instead of being a name etched in whispers. The Force would flow through her home like breath. Not in the way of Jedi, not in the way of Sith, but in the way of balance. A harmony the galaxy never knew it needed. Because Padmé wasn't just peace, she was presence. And presence is power. Anakin's heart would have felt that pulse across space. That tiny vibration of something still pure. It would have called to him. Not like the Force, but like forgiveness. Like hope, wearing a familiar face. Like the future he forgot he once wanted. And maybe, just maybe, she would have reached him first. Not Obi-Wan, not Luke, but her, the only one who ever truly saw him. Not as a Jedi, not as a weapon, but as the boy on Tatooine who dreamed of saving people. There is beauty in that vision, not because it's perfect, because it's possible. A galaxy healed not by war, but by the survival of one soul who refused to fade. Padmé was always the bridge. Between peace and power. Between justice and action. She saw what others couldn't, and said what others wouldn't. If she had survived, that courage would have spread like wildfire through the stars. It would have become the foundation of something new. Her children would not have grown to end the war. They would have grown to prevent it. To understand its roots, its rot, its repetition. Raised not on weapons, but wisdom. Not in hiding, but in purpose. They would have been leaders, not shaped by tragedy, but by love. The rebellion would still come, but it would come with unity, not just defiance. With strategy, not just sacrifice. Because Padmé knew how to fight without losing herself. And that knowledge would have been passed on, word by word, breath by breath. Anakin's redemption would not have come in a final act. It would have been a journey. A long, painful, beautiful path back to himself. Walked, not alone, but with her beside him. With the children he never got to raise. With the family he thought he'd destroyed. And the galaxy. The galaxy would have learned that healing is louder than hatred. That survival is a revolution in itself. And that sometimes, the one life we think is lost, is the one that saves everything. But that life was lost, and we are left to dream. To wonder what might have been if a single breath had lingered longer. If a heartbeat had fought just one more time. If the stars had given her one more chance. Instead, we watch the aftermath unfold in shadows. A galaxy built on lies. A love story shattered into silence. A legacy carried by children who never knew her. And a man who burned everything to save something that still slipped through his fingers. Padmé's death wasn't just an ending. It was a fracture. A wound that never closed. That scarred Anakin, that scarred the Jedi. That scarred every soul who came after. Her absence shaped everything. And yet, we barely speak of her. What she could have been. What she could have done. What she could have changed. It lives in the quiet corners of Star Wars. In the hollow between what was and what could have been. And maybe that silence is the loudest tragedy of all. Because sometimes, the greatest loss isn't when a person dies. It's when the galaxy forgets what it lost, and we are left with nothing but the echo.